I'm going to use the questionnaire NSSF contributor tool. The session is also recorded, so hopefully I will be able to upload the session so that you will review them at the end of the class, or maybe at your own free time. So if you go to your download training material folder, which I believe it should be somewhere in your desktop for those who have been installed the software. Materials, the resources section in your student portal. You should be able to also access the same file. So let's define some terminologies. One, at the end of this class, we should be comfortable with what a variable is. We should also be comfortable with what cases are. We should also be comfortable with what variable view is and what role it plays in the software. And also we have data view. So let me do that again. We need to know what a variable is. We also need to understand what cases are. We also need to know what variable view is. And then lastly, we have data view. So if you look at the questionnaire, I said this is a tool that you use to collect data. And if you look at the introduction part, it says what National Social Security Fund has requested Associate Consulting Africa to carry out a customer satisfaction survey. And the management will use these results for this study to effect changes that will help NSSF play her significant role in attaining her vision. Please note that your views in form of response to this question will be treated confidentially and will go a long way in assisting NSSF. So this is just an overview of what this survey is all about. And before we even go to the content of the survey, so we can define variables in this context. Of course, it depends with your background. So if you're a mathematician and you're here, I believe you will define variable in a different way. If you're an economist and you're here, you'll also define variable in a different way. But from a research perspective, or as a researcher, because in this class I'm just introducing you into the research process. And if you're here yesterday, I said research, statistics, and data are different sides of the same coin. So you must think as a researcher for you to understand data. And for you to understand data, you must apply statistics. So we can define variable as attributes or characteristics of a population that a researcher is interested to understand. So in this context, I as a researcher, I wanted to understand the customers of NSSF as an organization. So I had to come up with attributes or questions that now I'm interested in as far as customer satisfaction is concerned. So to clarify that, we can just say variables are now those attributes of that population. Or in layman, you can just say the question that a researcher is interested to understand or to get answers are the ones we'll be referring as variable. So one of the example is gender. I want to know the gender distribution of maybe people who are seeking services of NSSF. So I will have a question on gender. You wanted to understand age distribution. Now I'll have a question in form of age in years. So what am I saying here? The questions in a questionnaire are the ones that we will refer to them as variables. Okay, I hope you're on the same page there. Now, apart from variable, I also mentioned about cases. And cases are now the response or the answers that you get from these questions. So if you go out there and you're asking someone about their age, they tell you maybe they're between 18 and 24. So 18 and 24, that is a response. In SPSS, we refer to them as cases. I think also in medical field, sometimes we say we also use the same term as case 1, case 2, which means presence of something. You can also call them observation. I think more in economics, we refer to them as observation. But these are just terminologies that are referring to now the response that you're getting out of the question that you ask. Now, let's go to the software so that we also define the remaining two terminologies. So how do you access the software? As usual, I always encourage people to pin their most frequently used application or software in your taskbar. So if you go to your search icon, and I believe you are in a position to see my screen, if you just search for SPSS, you realize there are two SPSS icons that you will see. The first one is IBM SPSS Statistics 20 License Authorization Wizard, and then we also have IBM SPSS Statistics 20. If I'm moving fast, you also let me know on the comment section. I think you also have the freedom to communicate. There's no point of me moving fast and maybe I'm just alone in this class. So I hope you're all on the same page. So leave alone the authorization wizard because this is just for licensing. But the one that you'll be using is now the IBM SPSS statistics. So how do you pin it in your taskbar? If you right click, depending with the windows that you're using, so hopefully all of us are using 8 or 8.1 and above, so that means we're having the same interface. But if you're using less than 8, I think I'll just tell you to upgrade. I'll not even tell you how to access the software. By now you should be accessing Windows 8 and above. So there's an option of pin to taskbar. So for me, I have the option of unpin because I've already pinned my software down here. So I think that's something you can do at your own free time. So go ahead and open the software. Just double click once and then give it time because depending with now the processing speed of your computer, it might take a while before you even see anything presented. Why am I saying double click just once or twice and then be patient? Sometimes you find students who double click or open the software several times, and then of course these are heavy software, and a lot if a lot is happening at the back end, you realize your machine will eventually freeze, or it will take time before it processes the number of times that you have tried to access the software. So I encourage you to be patient. Now, I don't want to talk a lot about the first interface, but let me just briefly introduce what happens here before we dive into now the two interfaces, which are data view and variable view. So if you look here at the center, we have the option of opening an existing data source. That means every time you use SPSS, your files will be saved. There's a repository whereby you can access your files. So they will be listed here. So in case you want to go back and open a file that you used before, you can access it from here. I don't know why you would want to do that, but of course, if you have saved the file in your laptop or somewhere in your computer, you can always just go and double click on it. You don't have to necessarily come and open from here. Open another type of file. So if you have, let's say, Excel file or other different types of file, you can use the second interface. That means, of course, SPSS as a software, you can also have other file format. For instance, if you have a data file, but you want to analyze using SPSS, or you have an Excel file and you want to use SPSS, you can also have R, you can have SAS. So there are a lot of statistical software, and you don't have to limit yourself just to knowing how to use SPSS. So if you know other software, but now maybe your client requires you to use SPSS as a software of analysis, and maybe you've been using Stata, you can always open a different file format from this interface. SPSS comes with tutorials. So if you want maybe to read some few things on your own, just go and click on run a tutorial, and then it will take you to a website whereby you'll be able to access a lot of files with SPSS. So there's a support system in the software. Let me dive into typing data, which is not a good thing, but just an overview of what typing means. Paste data. You have an Excel spreadsheet and you want to paste it in SPSS, which I don't actually encourage you to do that. You can go with the option of typing data. Of course, in this class, let's learn on what are the best way of importing an Excel file into SPSS. So with typing data, I don't encourage that. So let's talk about running an existing query or creating a new query. So what's a query? These are languages. These are database language. And maybe at an advanced level, you realize that you might work with an organization whereby they are storing data in a server or in a database. So of course, it's not your job as an analyst, but we have now database managers, or now I think with the advancement in technology, now we have data engineers who will help you access data from a database, and then you as an analyst, your job is just to analyze or make sense data. So for them, they will be either running an existing query. That means if they already have a script, an SQL script or any database script that they have, they can just run it directly from here. Or if they're starting from scratch, then they will create a new query using a database wizard. Like, I don't want to stick a lot with the content of this first interface. So let me just close it so that we can start our class with this interface that we're having here. Now we have data view and variable view, and we have our tool here, NSSF contributor. And based on the first two definition, I've just said a variable are the questions that are in that questionnaire or that research tool. Cases are now the answers that you're going to get from now your variables. So how do you transfer details from a piece of paper or this questionnaire into now your software? Because that's actually the essence of data entry. You're trying to transfer information from a research tool to your software. So variable view is the interface whereby you will code your variables. Okay, that's like just that, the interface where you code your variables. And variables are the questions in the questionnaire. Data view, on the other hand, are now is the interface whereby you will code the cases or the answers. Okay, so let's do it so that we see what are these things that I'm talking about. So we're not theory. So let's dive. Okay. So putting a question or questions in an SPSS. One, you can either assign names to each question, or you can use question number as a way of identifying that question. Let's do that again so that we understand. There are two ways of coding variables in your software. One, you can either assign names to that variable. Two, you can use question numbers. Why are we using names and question number? You want to identify each of the variable, and of course they have to be unique. So P1 is of course different from P2, P3, P4, and so forth. So the software will be able to understand those different variables. If you assign names, then of course you'll have to say the first variable is gender, the second one is age, and those are unique characters or elements. So in this class, I'll be assigning names to variable. Whereby now, of course, if you come here, the first variable is actually gender. Why gender? And yet that's not the first question. The first question was serial number. I think the second one was date of interview. And these two are the ones we refer to them as metadata. And what is data? These are information that are only useful during the data collection process or fieldwork exercise. For instance, serial number was only meant to differentiate the different questionnaires that were there. Date of the interview also, I think, was used to take note on when was that data collected. These are just formalities to ensure that the data that you're collecting are up to standard, or we call it now data quality checks. Once you're done with fieldwork, you can't say you're sitting down and you're making sense out of serial number. You don't analyze serial number. That should make sense to you. You can't say I'm sitting down and I'm analyzing date of interview. It doesn't make sense. So I will not code serial number and date of interview. So in most cases, you will not be coding these two variables. But I'm not saying they're not useful. Their role is only during the fieldwork. Once you're done collecting data, then that's it. So I will start with gender. And if you look at gender, so yesterday I also mentioned about the types of questions that are there. There are questions that the respondent is only tied to give one answer. We call them now single select questions. And then we also have those questions that the respondent can give more than one answer. We refer to them as now multiple select questions. So of course, section 1, which is now general details, most of the questions there are single select. But if you go to section B, which is now awareness, you realize that the question there is more of multiple response. Even you think that it has been mentioned here that it's multiple mention. What does that mean? You're not limiting your respondent on the number of answers they can give you. And of course, we'll also see how you're going to handle that. So let's start with gender. And like I said, I'll be using names, or I'll assign names to represent the different variable. And the first variable there is gender. So I'll go to variable view, and then I will write there gender. Let's talk about different types of data types. At this level, we will focus mainly with two types of variables. But of course, as you advance, you will also access other data types. So we have numerics, and then we also have string. Those are the two that we're going to cover at this level. So what are numeric type of data? All those variables that the response you get are in numbers, we categorize them under the type numeric. I think that is straightforward. Numeric means the answers you're dealing with are numbers. A good example is a good example is age. If I ask you about your age, you say 20. 20 is a number. So that means age as a variable falls under the category of numeric. If I ask you about your name and you say you're Stephen, Stephen is not a number. Stephen is alphabetic characters. So all those variables that the response you get are in alphabet are the ones we refer to them as string. Okay. So let's understand with gender, because that's the variable we're handling here. So gender, if you look at the response, we have male or female. Male or female, these are alphabetic characters. Male, female. Okay. So that means gender is a string variable. That is in terms of communication. So if I ask you about your gender and you say you're male or you're female, male and female, those are not numbers, those are string. But now that you're working with a computer, you need to communicate with your machine. So SPSS doesn't know English, doesn't know the difference between male and female, because those are English. So how will SPSS know that male is different from a female? You're going to introduce values. Okay. So whereby you say, let the value of 1 represent male, let the value of 2 represent female. If you're going to do that, then it means you will code the variable type as numeric, even if you know very well that gender is a string. But when you're coding it, you code it as numeric so that you'll be able to assign the values of 1 and 2 to represent the categories that are there. I hope that makes sense. So here, if you go and click towards the end of that cell, there's an option to choose between different file types or data types. So I said at this level, I will only restrict myself into two, which is numeric and string. So of course, as we build our knowledge, we will be able to understand other data types that exist. So I'll click OK, and then let's talk about width and the role of width. So the role of width is to restrict the number of characters in a response. Let me explain that. If you have 8, then it means the software will only accept 8 characters in as far as the answer you give for gender is concerned. Let me use a name, for instance, to explain that. So if you're collecting, for instance, names of your respondent, and then you restrict, let's say, by 3. If you come and write here 3, then it means you'll only accept individuals whose names have 3 characters. Let me use an example. If your name is Ivy, the software will accept. If your name is Job, the software will accept. But if your name is George, the software will not accept, because George has more than 3 characters. If that makes sense. So by default, we'll be having 8 for width. You can adjust the decimal to 0, because of course it doesn't make sense to have decimal point when you're working with gender. You can't say you're 1.5 male or 1.5 female. So unless it makes sense, that's when you will apply decimal places. Otherwise, always adjust it to 0. Label. What's the role of label? Label basically is meant to provide more information about the variable name. And in this case, you're considering the next person who might come and use your data. What do I mean here? During the process of working with data or research process, you realize it's not just a one-person job. The person who might be doing data entry might not be the same person who's coming in to do data management, and also maybe somebody else will come in for analysis. So label is where now you can write what that variable is all about. And I always encourage people to use, you can paste now the entire question there, or you can write something that somebody else will understand in as far as that variable name is concerned. So in this, I will have respondent gender. About the values, so we'll say that the value of 1 represent male, and then let the value of 2 represent female. Okay, I hope we're together there. So you just value, you put the value there, like 1, label it as male, and then you add, and the missing, and then column. Column basically is just to adjust the size of a column. So if you want to use number there, well and good. But if you want to use the easier one, just take your cursor in between any of the column, and you can adjust the size of your column. Okay, so there's nothing much in as far as columns are concerned. Same applies to alignment. So of course, by default, numerics are aligned to the left. Sorry, numerics are aligned to the right, and strings are aligned to the left. So if you write a number, will be on the right side of that cell or that box. If you're using alphabetic characters, it will start from the left side of that box. That is standard approach for almost all software, even in Excel. I think is how softwares work. So we're not going to touch a lot about that. So let's briefly talk about measurement. And this one I'll encourage you to read. So there's a glossary document that I'll share. Then take your time, review it so that you understand some of these terminologies. And I'm sure this is not the first time that you are interacting with these terms like measuring your variable. That is if you've been attending your lectures in campus. But of course, it's a good time for you to remind yourself. So I'll be sharing with you some documents so that you read them. So there are 3 ways of measuring a variable. One, you have nominal measure, you have ordinal measure, and you also have scale. So let's start with nominal. Example is gender. Gender falls under nominal. Why is gender a nominal? All variables that have no statistical criteria to rank those response, we refer to them as nominal. Well, what am I saying here? Remember, we assigned the value of 1 and 2 to represent male and female. So we're not just saying that 2 has more weight than 1. So in this case, we're just identifying male and female. So 1 and 2, they're just the same thing. They're not weights that you're assigning to those groupings. So even if you interchange and say let the value of 2 be male and then let the value of 1 be female, you're going to get the same results. Okay. So when there's no statistical criteria to rank your response, those variables will fall under nominal. I think the next one is ordinal. And an example of an ordinal measure are the Likert scale question, or I think there's this question on mission and core values, which I hope we'll have a chance to go through it here. You realize there's some numbers assigned to the response, whereby the most positive person is assigned a value of 5. That's a weight assigned to that response. That means a very satisfied person is assigned more weight compared to a very dissatisfied person. So what am I saying in terms of ordinal? Ordinal comprises of all those variables that have a statistical criteria to rank the response that are there. And you can see the ranking are here, whereby the most negative person is assigned a value of 1 and the most positive person is assigning a value of 5. Of course, we'll have fun when we'll be analyzing this part of mission and core value so that you actually see what does it mean when we say we are assigning weights to this variable. So for now, let me not focus a lot on measures because of course you will read, and then if you have a question, we will discuss this more during our next class. Scale comprises of all those variables that are in continuous form. What does that mean? The variables have you can extract range. So of course at a later stage you will have a chance to understand what is a continuous variable, or of course when you discuss continuous and categoricals. Okay, but for now just know scale comprises of continuous variable, and since you're working with a continuous variable, then you'll be able to extract some sort of range. So gender, I will have it as nominal. On the part of role, I think that is all about how the software works. So I'll not explain a lot on role. So I'll just leave it at input. Let me go to the second variable. And here I have age. So I'll have age. And remember the rules of creating variable names, you can't have spaces. So an example, if you are working with a variable like education level, you cannot have spaces between education and level. So either you combine it as one or you can use an underscore on the same. So age is numeric because I'm having numbers there. I'll leave it at width of 8, which is the default. I adjust the decimal to 0, and then the best practice I say you can just copy paste so that you label that variable. In case somebody else comes and look at your work, they will know that age basically means age in years. In terms of values, I'll say now let the value of 1 represent the category 18 to 24, and then 2 represent the category 25 to 34, all the way to above 55. Okay, I think things should start making sense to you right now. So I'll say 18 to 24, and then 2 is 25 to 34, and then 3 is 35 to 44, and then 4 is 45 to 54, and then lastly the last group is 5, which is 55 and above. So I think this is where also English should come in. Like you should understand what it means when you're saying above 55 and 55 and above. Do they mean the same thing or there's a difference between them? So in this case, I will say 55 and above so that I also accommodate that individual who's 55 years old. If you say above 55, then it means it's from 56 and above. So be careful on how you present your work. So I'll add and then okay. I think I'm good to go. In terms of measure, I will say this one is ordinal. Yeah, I think there's some sort of order. So the person who's above 55 is not the same as the person who's 18 years old. Apart from age, I think the next variable is occupation, and you're getting the drill. So I'll just have the occupation numeric, adjust decimal to 0. Occupation is just occupation. There's nothing much as far as description of that variable is concerned. And forgive my manners in terms of labeling. So make sure if you're using caps, just have caps in your responses. If you're having lowercase, just make sure you have a nice one, like a more professional kind of database. But for learning purposes, so I just have to do what I do. So the first grouping is employed, self-employed, and then claimant. So employed, then 2 will be self-employed, then the last group is claimant. So that person will just there to claim their benefit. Then okay, I'll have it as nominal. It doesn't matter whether you are employed or self-employed. Any value can represent your grouping. Let me go to the next one. And as you can see, we are working with variables that the respondent has no choice but only to choose one. Okay. Relationship to contributor. So I'll just say relationship. And then we're going to assign values to represent the categories. And then I'll now say relationship to contributor. And the first grouping is either is the same or is a family member or a friend. So one with a friend. it should be 3. Okay, and then in terms of measure, it will be nominal. It doesn't matter the order of those names. So let me okay, let's do the region. Let's do all of them. But by now I'm sure you're getting the drill. You should know like how we are now coding. So region is just region. I don't think there's much explanation. Or you can say customer location to emphasize on what. Then the few of them. What else is that? Let me have central as the third one, so I don't have to exhaust all of them. Now, these types of question, I think we refer to them as single select. Okay, you only choose one among the options. So let's talk about the second part. Which is what we have the section B part, and section B is majorly on awareness. So the first question is okay, is more like a qualitative type of data because somebody has to write. And actually, I think there's an instruction there. They handle that. I think that's another useful uh, variable that we can look at. So I'll have it as station. And station now will be a string variable because now people will be writing what that station is. And then I think station is just station, but let me look at the explanation. The state station is the NSSF branch or sub branch. So I'll just copy and paste there. So on values, of course, we're not going to assign values to a string variable. And then here I'll have it as nominal, which again doesn't make sense, but let's just have it as nominal. If you look at the alignment, you can see that now it's left. Well, that tells you that this one is automatic. If you select the type of variable as string, alignment will be left. If you select numeric, alignment will be right. Let's talk about awareness. And if you look at awareness, the first question is what? Which were your sources of awareness about NSSF? And you're not supposed to read out, and it's a multiple mention. So how do you handle this type of question? Let's start with the options that are there, and I'll start with the last option, which is other, and enclosed in a bracket or a parenthesis, it says what you need to specify. Okay. So when you say other, what does that mean? When you say other, it means you have an option which is not among the ones that have been provided here. For instance, if maybe somebody was able to know about NSSF through Facebook, you realize there's no option for Facebook among the closed-ended response. So that means that respondent will click on other, but that will not be enough. They need to go ahead and specify what is this other platform that they were able to obtain information about NSSF. So they will write here Facebook. Somebody else can come and write here Instagram. Somebody can come and say LinkedIn. Okay. So for other specify, we now refer to this type of answers as open-ended. And the type of data you're collecting there is qualitative. I think that's why at Dallas, we have both quantitative and qualitative classes. So that you also need to know how do you analyze, or what are the software that you use to analyze quantitative data, and also what are the software that you use now to analyze qualitative data. So for qualitative data, I'll just have an overview, but if you're interested, you can now join that class. So how do you handle this qualitative information? For qualitative data now, you will be working with what we call thematic analysis. And thematic analysis is where you come up with themes. What does that mean? For instance, I'm just using an example of three individuals, one who mentioned Facebook, another one maybe mentioned Instagram, and another person maybe mentioned LinkedIn. So you realize that this information that people are writing here, or you are writing as the research, as the person collecting data, you are writing those information here because you're using a paper. So when you're doing data entry, you realize this part of other specified, you are not going to code it in your SPSS, because SPSS is not a software that handles qualitative data. Let's digest that. So other specified, you don't code it in SPSS. So how do you do that? So you will read the answers that you're getting from your respondent, and then identify the groupings or the response that are more or less the same, and then put them in form of a group. Okay, I'm not so sure if I'm communicating, but I'm trying my best here. So what am I saying? One, you read every answer that you're getting. After you read, you categorize them. So if somebody is talking about Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, you as a researcher, you know that all these three platforms are social media platforms. So you will come up with a theme called social media. And now this theme is the one that you're going to put in your final report. And what will you write there? And you'll say, apart from radio, TV, and newspaper, there are three respondents who are mentioning social media. But you have not just go ahead and say Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You've just categorized them because you'll be getting a lot of uh, unique wordings, but maybe they mean the same thing. Okay, so I think because of time, let me not keep you guys here for long. So let me stop there. Let me just stop there, and then in our next class on Monday, I think I will now be strict and I'll move at a higher speed so that we cover the multiple response part and also the Likert scale part, this question on mission and core values. So for now, I don't know if my audio is okay, but Esther, you can go ahead. If you have a question or concern, I think we can have.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm good. I was wondering how come I can't get the recordings of these classes.
Uh, I think they were removed, all of them. So these class will be the first 2024. So we'll be uploading them hopefully tomorrow.
How about the Excel functions? Nah, the previous ones.
Mm, okay. I think we will have a live session for Excel.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so let's concentrate right now for SPSS. I know we have covered Excel, but we'll do Excel properly because it's more of a repetition. Like SPSS, we do Stata, and then from Stata we go back again to Excel, like that. So we have a lot of time together.
Okay, so today's class will be available.
Yeah, so this will be the first recording, and then after every class, the next day I will be uploading them so that you go through and practice.
Okay, thank you.
Sawa. Anything else? So if you're all good, then I think the next thing is just make sure you're now comfortable with how to access classes, because we're not going to be sending links so that you join class. You can do that through your email or through the student portal. So thank you all for your time. If there's nothing else, then let's meet on Monday. So classes are Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Uh, I don't know. Maybe we might adjust the time to start at 8 p.m., but that will be communicated whether we'll be doing 8 p.m. or 8:30. Have a good night and see you all in our next class.